understand Napoleon at the present time, it will not suffice to give an example of style written in a lazy manner at the corner of a table. Truly, his life offers rare material for poetic development. Granted, but the generation which preceded ours excelled in that art, and from Byron to Hugo has left scarcely any themes to treat. The cycle is not yet shut in our days. Young men with rolling words and violent images undertake to translate the immortal epic, but however excited their prose may be, the ideas of which they make use and even their imagery cannot possibly be new. They transcribe in that language of today and tomorrow the songs, incorrect and old in form, which for half a century have consoled the nation and have kept him before her eyes, which during the worst ages she has had to pass through, have sustained her pride in herself, the rhythms of which at the present day seem worn out only because they have drawled out so long from the throat of the people. Will the songs of the present day possess the same glory and awaken the same echoes? No one wishes this more than I, but singing is the business of the young, and because legend ought to maintain its rights over the soul of France, will it be asserted that history ought to abandon its own rights? Well then, one will help forward the other. The inquiry which history will set on foot will in no respect tend to destroy legend, for legend is but historical truth turned into poetry, if you will, added to and generalized in certain directions, but almost always strangely exact. History will bring to light new elements of which tomorrow legend will make use, which it will raise to sublimity at its will, the outlines of which it will soften, often shade, lending it that lofty spirit of poetry with which the imagination alone of the people can surround its hero. But what is wanted is a history, clear, accurate, based entirely on documents which are trustworthy, a history which goes down to the minutest detail, which leaves no ears of corn to glean on the field, which it has chosen for itself. A history is wanted, written with no other object in view than to search after truth, apart from any party feeling, with a complete independence which shall have the dryness and the detail of a legal document, and which in proof of the impartiality the author should gloss over none of the defects, should tone down none of the blemishes, should travel without relaxation of purpose to the very end of the information collected. Every other method of procedure would be futile, dishonest, opposed to the end in view. The hero should appear in his completeness, lighted up on all sides by relentless light. No veil should conceal any part of him. It is the business of others to drape his figure. There must be no reservation in the description of his deeds, but the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He must no longer be lauded with phrases. The truth alone must suffice. And at a blow, the spiteful pamphlets and imbecile apologies will at once find their refutation. The latter, by their stupidity, are worse than the libels. To measure the emperor with the same yardstick as an adroit man of business who keeps his books properly and is content with modest profits on the goods which he retails out, to polish up the sharp edges of his metal to the point of resembling those coins where you can still distinguish the image of the sovereign without being able to distinguish what sovereign it is, to take away from his character and his intellect all their excess so as to bring down his physical and moral features to an expression respectably commonplace and honestly vulgar, is to understand his nature still less than by attributing to it excessive vices, ambition without measure, even crimes without parallel. At least he would remain great. It would remain the genius of evil, but it would still be a genius. It would not be a kind of pupil of the ghetto, compacted of usury and liberalism. To those would-be impartial persons who on every occasion run down their fellow countrymen for strangers, to the moralists of the study who appear to wish to ignore all the unclean dregs of human existence, to apply to Napoleon a philosophic rule, which they have certainly not borrowed from their contemporaries. The facts will supply an answer. Being suspected of having hypnotized myself about Napoleon, I ought, more than any other person, to abstain from all polemics and to keep back as far as possible my personal judgments. I will only say what I have found in the documents, and I do not feel that I have the right to give my conclusions, reserved as they were those of a former volume. They called forth criticisms, the justice of which I acknowledge. What I put forward is a fragment of an investigation. Judgment can only be given when the whole investigation is under the eyes of the public. The plan which I adopted, of indicating none of the sources on which I have drawn, has been vigorously attacked not only in France but in other countries, but I still adhere to it. On the one hand, it seems to me useless to make the reader take part in the very long and very complex work to which I have given myself up. On the other hand, the references which I should have to offer would teach no one anything, for the larger part of the documents on which I worked either belong to myself or form part of private archives. In a short time, I shall be in a position to publish in their completeness certain of the texts of which I made use. It will then be seen whether they are or are not authentic. In addition to this, with the exception of cases where I am under obligation to be silent, I have ready to give to workers who are interested in the subject all the proofs they may desire. This is a course which I have already taken. The most critical in the examination of documents have been perfectly contented with my explanation. Looking at this book, which makes its appearance less than 6 months after my volume of Napoleon and Les Femmes, it will perhaps be said that I wish to take advantage of success and to cling to a fashion. As a matter of fact, it is the present volume which ought to have been published first. During last year, in March and April 1893, a review printed the 3 articles which form the woof of it. If I have completed them, it has been with notes collected a long time back. I have no need to borrow from certain compilations which have been placed on sale since then, and I undertake to establish from motives which will be appreciated for these studies a priority which cannot be questioned. As to fashion, I have not the leisure to follow it. It would be impossible for me to improvise a book which, whether good or bad, is a result of 20 years' study. It was not the fashion to declare oneself a Bonapartist at the time when I affirmed myself to be one, and if the fashion passes by of writing upon the empire, I shall nonetheless go on with my work. But however, I do not think that it will pass by for the reason I do not think it is a fashion.